Thank you. It's good to be here. I am going to talk about point-to-point encryption a bit, but I'm going to open things up a little bit more. I'm not sure how much the audience is much concerned about point-to-point encryption as other topics. I'm going to give you about a 5-minute introduction to who Heartland is, because I think all of our companies are changing in this changing world. And we have a lot of things going on at Heartland and a lot going on in mobile payments, some of which I think might be interesting to many of you. So just real briefly, Heartland's a $1.7 billion market cap company traded on the New York Stock Exchange. We were started in '97. We have about 3,500 employees at this point, 28 offices around the country. We process about 3.3 billion. We settle about 3.3 billion transactions a year, which makes us number 5 in the rankings there. And we're right today only processing in the US. One of the major differences of Heartland is that we have 1,100 salespeople, all W-2 employees. Most of them, 80% of them, making an average of 5 or 6 new installations a month. And that's something that we have that's sort of unique. We have one brand across the country. We don't sell through resellers at all, although we have many, many partners who refer business to us under our name. We started off as an SMB company, grew organically, became public, but in the meantime have acquired quite a bit of business and also grown. We just installed MasterCard's cafeterias. EMV has been talked about for a long time. MasterCard had an investors conference coming up on September 17th, and they couldn't find anybody to implement EMV in their cafeterias. So we volunteered to go ahead and make our best efforts. We found a point of sale partner that went in with us, and by golly, we made it. So we've been able to attract a number of large clients, including, I think we're now the second largest petroleum processor. 7-Eleven and Phillips 66 are our biggest customers there. We are the largest parking lot operator. Standard Parking based here in Chicago and Central Parking are our clients. We have a lot of stadiums and arenas. We're the #1 processor of college campuses, and we're the #1 processor of K through 12 school systems, which are very interesting for mobile. We just installed the Chicago City Schools, 636 schools here the last few months. We're very focused on colleges and K through 12 because there's always such a significant part of a community that they're involved with. And we want to be, our goal has always been to be Main Street America's merchant processor. And so we tend to have larger merchants that are more well established versus a lot of the really small startup companies. We've been drug into mobile primarily because of Square. We have a solution to Square. We've expanded the Square with our reader. We provide the additional services that Square doesn't provide. I've said from the beginning that I thought Square was a game-changing company. They are. They've experienced their issues along their growth pattern, but raising money at $6 billion market valuation is a pretty good thing. They're definitely a player and somebody to contend with. Marla asked me to talk about security and point-to-point encryption specifically. I did an interview with Dark Reading the other day, and I've been quoted a lot about my comments about encryption and tokenization and so on, and what merchants are doing. And I really don't have a feel for how important this topic is with this group. I could spend the whole half hour talking about it. I don't think that's what you really want to do. These are the things I want to talk about that I think are very interesting, and some of these I think will give you new perspectives. But coming back up to security, there are solutions out there right now that can be implemented. Somebody mentioned Point, the Verifone's Point acquisition. I think that was really a big deal. There are other solutions out there like that, which basically take the point of sale out of scope. And merchants need to take their point of sale out of scope. That's the direction that we're headed with our customers as much as we can. There's an investment required. And the beauty of the whole thing is that with Apple Pay, with EMV, NFC readers are needed. That means that the hardware has to be upgraded. And if a merchant's upgrading for EMV, they are crazy not to upgrade also to do tokenization and encryption or point-to-point encryption if end-to-end's not available. To provide end-to-end encryption, which we created right after our breach, we were working on end-to-end encryption before we knew that we were breached. When we were breached in 2008 and learned about it in 2009, we went to Taiwan and worked with a company called Voltage, and we brought Voltage from email and file encryption into magnetic stripe encryptions. And we launched that product in July of 2009. And because we're a processor going all the way to the card brands for settlement and back, we're able to provide end-to-end encryption. The only point along our path, you go from the card swipe to the CPU, to the gateway, to the processor, to the card brand, each of those, all those points along the way, we decrypt one time because we have to create a new key. And that's done through a HSM, a hardware security module within our data centers. And we're able to encrypt without any decryption except that one point. I think that's probably the best that you can do. 2 of the card brands accept encrypted transactions and 2 of them do not. It's all SSL encryption, so the file is encrypted, but the individual transactions are not. We think that by going to an out-of-scope solution, basically, for those of you who aren't familiar with that terminology, it's basically taking the sophisticated POS system and keeping the PII out of that system. How? By having a separate card swipe that only sends over to the POS the amount of the sale, the last 4 digits of the card number, maybe the BIN number, and everything else goes directly from that card swipe through encryption processes all the way to the card brands, independent of the point of sale. That reduces the scope of PCI and basically takes the POS out of scope. Somebody has to say it's out of scope, but the solutions can be certified as out of scope. Now, the problem with that for retailers is that most of the processors are charging a transaction fee. And it's good to charge a transaction fee if you can get it. The fact is this is a software license type product. There's an investment, of course, in the development of the software, but there's no variable transaction cost. So some of us don't charge a transaction fee for our out-of-scope solutions. But it's part of the consideration of the entire decision about making the investment for EMV. And we're seeing that most merchants do want to do this now. The petroleum world is a different world, and that's a whole different ballgame because it's so very expensive to change out hardware at the pump. So any question, point-to-point encryption is better than no encryption. It's way better. The part that's been missing, and one of the things I talked about in the interview that's been somewhat controversial, is that I think that many processors were trying to sell the idea of encryption at the CPU is good enough, and that's proven to not be true, right, over and over again. When that data is in the clear, from the point of card swipe back to the CPU, either in the store or at the processor or in the gateway, there's vulnerability, massive vulnerability. Hannaford's was the first one to get breached that way. We were the second one. And that's impossible to deal with unless you encrypt at the point of the card being read. Now, there's a couple centimeters there of a wire where if somebody could get onto that wire physically, they could intercept data in the clear, but the actual mechanism itself has the chip in it to be able to provide the encryption. And with modern encryption and AES level encryption, you can encrypt every batch. So those who say, well, they can break encryption, encryption hasn't been broken in the field to start with. Not even duck put or triple does. AES certainly hasn't. And even if the bad guys get a batch of data, we change the key every batch. And you can change the key every transaction. So the idea of stealing data that's encrypted and trying to decrypt it is really doesn't seem to be practical. Now, the bad guys are always figuring out new and different ways to do things. So point-to-point encryption, the best, if you're going to do it, it's the best way, and by far the most important one is to do it at the card swipe. Encrypting it from the CPU back into the system, that's all good too, but the most important one is to do it at the source. Any questions or comments about any of that before I move on? Okay, so there's just a lot going on out here in this mobile world, and it's really exciting. Some of you may have seen some of our stuff. We acquired a company called Leaf in Cambridge, Mass. The high point there is this is an open platform. We're a processor. We like to compete, but we also are open. And if our customer wants to process with our competitor, we are facilitating that. We think that's an important thing. We don't think the industry is going that direction, so we're either really smart or really stupid. We'll see. But we think we have a lot of other services at Heartland. We do payroll, we do managed network services, we do loyalty, we do gift, and other things. So we want to be able to capture as much of our customers' business as possible. We don't have to capture the payments business. And so the whole concept of Leaf is to be this open platform, SaaS-based, where a tablet can run a smaller business, a whole network of tablets, and so on. Some of the things that we're running into, we're working with the Taco Bell rollout that's coming out later this month to 5,800 stores. And this single source of truth issue with mobile ordering is something that I'm not sure the industry sort of reconciled itself with. Omni-channel is wonderful. It's wonderful for the consumer. For the IT department, at the merchant though, you have, where is the data? Where is the single source of truth for the order, for the transaction, in terms of pricing particularly, and in terms of inventory? If someone is ordering from their mobile phone, let's say they're ordering lunch on their mobile phone, and there's been a price change, where is the price coming from for that mobile ordering versus in the store? If there's 3 or 4 different ways to make an order, then is there one single database that's being used? There's hundreds of mobile ordering systems out there for food right now, but many of them don't use the data that's being used at the POS in the store. And also, people want to have their lunch at 12 o'clock. And if you get too many orders at 12 o'clock, you've got to know that so that you can tell the person, no, you can't come in until 12:15. So managing all the orders that are coming in from the various Omni positions is really an important thing. And I think this is one of the big issues, especially the larger merchants are dealing with. And it's a good problem. It's a problem that just has to be resolved, but it's a significant issue and something that needs to be dealt with. Another point that I think is interesting is that we've been experimenting with a product called One Princeton. One Princeton is a payment method. It's a QR code-based access to the checking account. And we've been experimenting with it in Princeton, New Jersey. We have 62 merchants, including the large grocery store in town. And we've learned a lot about it. And we've learned that we knew right up front, obviously, people don't want to give their checking account in a mobile app, but many will do it. Our program is, we charge the merchant a nickel a transaction, but they donate 1% of the transaction to the charity selected by the consumer. So the consumers who are supporting their local nonprofits are very interested and participate. Consumers who like to support downtown merchants participate, and so on. And sometimes the merchants give extra benefits for using that payment technology. In the process of doing this now for the last 15 months, and we have Princeton Regional Schools as well, so the parents are paying for their school lunch programs. They can, on their mobile phone, right? They can put $20 or reload their students' lunch account or activities account, see what they ordered for lunch today, what they paid for lunch. Trying to bring all that together into a single system called One Princeton. We're developing now basically a prepaid account, which is sort of what Starbucks has got, right? Where the consumer reloads their account. They can do it from their checking account or from their Visa, MasterCard, their GPR card. And the fact that we can get away from these small transactions and go to a $25, say a minimum $25 reload, solves the problem for the small ticket merchants, like the small delis, the QSRs, and so on. The technology is out there now to be able to, and Starbucks has proven it, you can get away from the small ticket interchange problem. And this is part of what's very interesting, I think, to many of the merchants. They're dealing with EMV. They're wanting to be able to do these loyalty programs and do mobile payments, but they're dying with the cost of doing $5 transactions. And this is a way to solve it, is to be able to have a mobile app where there's a prepaid account that has $40 or $50 on it, comes down to $5 or $10 and is automatically reloaded just like your Easy Pass. And that type of a solution is very attractive, particularly to merchants with small tickets, and I think it's happening now as we're speaking. That doesn't take care of the fine dining situation. EMV in a fine dining establishment is a whole other ballgame, right? Somebody was talking about BLE. We think BLE is a great way to identify the consumer as they walk into the restaurant, and to talk to the point of sale and open up a tab or send a message back to the consumer, do you want to open a tab, and be able to have the interaction that way. We made an investment in Tabbed Out, a company that you probably know, and their model is to basically send a 6-digit code that the consumer has to give to the bartender. And that's not that's not a very friendly experience. BLE solves that problem. And if when you're in Europe, it's great to have somebody bring you an Ingenico terminal and you swipe your card and put in the tip amount or whatever. That's probably not going to fly very, very soon in the U.S. There needs to be a friendlier way to do a pay at the table that's EMV. Bringing the device to the table just isn't going to work very well. And we have a Leaf presenter for restaurants that's not EMV. We're upgrading it, but EMV equipment is just a little bit too bulky to be conveniently brought to the table in a fine dining restaurant. So we think the answer there is BLE to talk to the POS, for the consumer to be able to talk back and forth to the POS, and for the check to be sent, the tip to be added at the table, and the security of the mobile phone is sort of overcomes the need for EMV. Because you don't have the mag, you're not getting the mag stripe to start with. You can do security based upon sending alerts, confirmation back from the cell phone, GPS, all kinds of different ways to do it. Another big topic with Apple Pay is that I'm skipping around here, but I think these are issues that maybe you're hearing a different perspective on. So MCX has been out for a long time. A couple of our big customers are members of MCX. We've talked to MCX on numerous occasions. And MCX has this idea that it's us or nobody. you have to just swear that you're not going to use any other alternative payment system. I don't see how that survives, frankly. I think Apple Pay sort of kills that entire concept because consumers will pay with what they want to pay and with the device they want to pay. We learned that a long time ago, right? That's why, well, whatever. I think the concept of PayPal, PayPal is a competitor to MCX. Apple Pay is a competitor to MCX. Is MCX going to be able to really get away with $1 trillion of the economy being excluded from PayPal and Apple Pay? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to fly. And MCX does want to come down into the smaller merchants, and they want to do that through companies like us. So I think they're going to have to change their model that it's MCX and only MCX. I know Paydiant's in there and FIS and so on, and the solution I think is a great one. I think though the business model is really challenged, particularly now that PayPal is being split off and also Apple Pay. Another thing that I think is really relevant in today's marketplace is that merchants are really tired of the disintermediation that lots of our solutions are bringing to them. And so far they sort of have to live with it. OpenTable and Grubhub are the two that affect our merchants the most because we're in the restaurant business pretty strongly. And giving up the ownership of your consumer to OpenTable is not a pleasant experience, especially when your customers are being made offers by your competitors, and that's all being facilitated by OpenTable. And your lunch business being disintermediated by Grubhub, the restaurant becoming nothing more than a commodity food factory is also something that's not terribly attractive. The loyalty programs of points and so on have long histories. The idea of offers, all this just disintermediates the margin of the merchant, and they're looking for solutions that let them gain loyalty with their customers and let them give things to the customers that are not disintermediating their margins. We have Caesar's Palace in Vegas and also all the Hard Rocks that are using a product that we have called Fresh Text, which allows the consumer to walk in. There's a waiting line, and you key in your cell phone number into the iPad, and then we have a series of alerts letting you know when your table is going to be ready, and so on. And Caesar's is using that. Their most favored customers, their VIP customers, they're letting them come into line up in their room 3 hours before they want to eat, or move people to the head of the line. And it's really important for an organization like Caesar's to have people go out gamble, not standing in line waiting to go through their buffet. And so those are the kinds of things that our customers are trying to find. What are things that we can do with mobile technology that aren't going to disintermediate our margin, that are going to be attractive to consumers? And one of our customers is, who I won't name, has been able to increase the throughput at their lunch hours by as much as 40% per store. And that's because you're ordering either at a kiosk in the store or through the mobile phone. It takes people out of line, lets them go and pick up their order, and it also allows them to deal with all the orders coming in at one time and scheduling them out so that they're manageable. And many locations now, QSRs especially, are looking at having curbside delivery, taking part of their parking lot and having people pull in and having runners bring their food out to them. The order's already prepared and it's paid for. And that changes the business models and allows for consideration of improving the throughput. And one of the ways of offering a benefit to a consumer to use mobile payments and maybe to even use their prepaid account so that there's not an interchange cost for the traditional card types. One of the benefits, you could say that you get special, some special handling, special benefits of the delivery of your food. Those are the kinds of things that are being really, there's a lot of energy being worked on there. Decoupled debit is something that has come and gone in terms of being fashionable. We're now calling our decoupled debit product Heartland Direct. We have merchants who are implementing it. I talked about One Princeton. That's one of the scenarios. But our college campuses in 2007, we put little RFID tags on the back of cell phones at Slippery Rock University. And so going back to 2007, NFC readers were in every merchant, including Walmart, the Walmart store in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania, and we proved that NFC purchases using the campus money, which is a closed-loop system, to open that up to the merchants in the community is something that's very attractive to everybody. The students, well, not everybody. The students like it. The merchants like it. The universities don't like it that much because they're not forcing their students to consume, and spend their money in their cafeteria plan. But that type of a system, we know that it works, and the fact that it can be, we were using RFID codes. The QR scanners is what we're using in Princeton. We're getting away from all that now because of NFC. NFC's always worked very nicely. It just there wasn't consumer adoption. We absolutely think that Apple Pay is going to change that. And so we're thinking that the QR scanners are on their way out, and that the barcode readers at the conventional grocery store barcode readers, and those are going to survive, we think, for sure, for lots of reasons, and continue on and also serve in the payments world. But having a special reader for a QR code when you've got NFC, what's the future of that? The scanners are very expensive relative to the cost of all the other equipment. So we think the QR scanner business is going to be changed dramatically as a result of all this. So I think I'm at a half an hour, and I knew I would run out of time. But thank you very much. It's good talking with you.